Hello and welcome to another tutorial from MoICT. In this one, we're going to be making some improvements for the four-way sprite movements project that we did before. So the project that we have completed is this one at the moment. Just going to run this one quickly. So at the moment, we are able to move a character up, down, left and right and keep track of the movement animation, right? And one of the things I want to add to this project was to randomly drop items on the screen and the player to collect it, and for us to sort of have a brief description on what the player collected on the screen. So if I just show you what we're going to be making, so here I have the exact same program, but in this one, I've just, basically, as you can see, I'm dropping some of these items on the screen, and then as you walk up to it, you collect them, and on the bottom here, it tells you which one you collected, right? And each item does have a lifeline, so after a certain amount of time it will disappear on its own, so that way the screen is not clogged with items. So if I collect this one, it says I collected instructions. If I go to the sword, I collected the giant sword, and then I collected a gold ring, golden lamp, and so on. So to get started with this project, let's go and take a look at the assets that we're going to need. So first asset that we're going to need is here. So these are the item images that I've collected. So basically this is named from item underscore 01 to item underscore 017. So we have 17 items altogether. We're going to dynamically load them into the program. And then right after that, we're going to randomly spawn any one of them onto the screen. You can download these images from the link in the description alongside with the source code for this project. So before we get started, just make sure you have completed this tutorial first from the MoICT channel, and then you can jump right into this one. Okay, so to copy and paste these project into the location that we want, first I'm going to right click on the Solutions Explorer and then go to right click and then click on Open File Explorer, Open in File Explorer, and then that should open up the project directory for us. And then right inside, I'm going to go to bin, debug, .NET 6 Windows, and then here we have the files that we need. This is our executable file for the game. Here's our player sprites that we used before. This is the background image, and now we need to copy and paste the items folder inside of here. Minimize all of this, copy the items folder from the desktop and paste it right here next to the player folder. Okay, I'm going to close this window now. Okay, so to start, I'm going to copy and paste this label first. So I'm going to copy and paste it again. So there's a second one there. I'm going to place it right about here. So I want to see what items collected from there. And then this one's going to say collected. Just put a 00 next to it. Right, so as you can see, if we leave it like this, the word that we want is going to go past the form. So to stop that from happening, I need to disable the auto size. So go to the properties, find auto size option, select that to false, and now I'm able to size it manually. So I'm just going to make it slightly larger like so. And then I need to align the text so it aligns with the right. Aligns with the right here, yeah, right middle. Okay. Okay, and this one is called label 1, so I'm going to call it LBL. Collected. Okay, so I'm just going to change the name of this label to LBL collected. Okay, and we are going to need to create a class for this example. So I'm going to go back to the Solutions Explorer, right click on the Solutions Explorer with the one that says four-way movement with sprite images. Right click on that, go to add, and then I'm going to click on class. Okay, let's select a class from here, and then I'm going to call this one items, and then click add. Okay, so the items class will be added into the Solutions Explorer as well. Okay, so let's get started with the items class first. Now, in the beginning here, we're going to need to use the system drawing because we need to incorporate an image into this. We're going to say using system.drawing, and then do a semicolon here. All right. And right inside of the class, we're going to make some space so we can add our variables and the functions and the constructor that we need. First variable we need is a public integer called position x. So that's the position x. Okay, so that's the position of the item that's going to be dropped. We also need a public in position y. Okay, after that we need a public image called item underscore image. We need a public int for height, public int for width, and also we need a public string for the name of the item or the description of the item. Okay. We also need to do a random. We'll just call it range equals to new random. Okay, and then we need a local variable called lifetime, and we'll give it a 200. We need a public boolean called expired. We'll set this one to false for now. So when the item is expired, it is to be removed from the screen. Okay, let's create the constructor items. Okay, so this constructor is going to be called each time the item is created, so we're able to give it a sort of like a default value for anything. Okay, so because we're using an image, when we call the constructor to create the item cannot be empty. So we're just going to give it a dummy image inside of the item image. So we say item image is equals to new image. Actually, no, equals to new image equals to image from file. Okay, and then inside of here we're going to say items, and then item underscore 01 dot png. Okay, so the items is going to go to the items folder, find the first item, and load it into the items image here. So that way it's not empty when we actually call it. Okay, but once we actually create the item from the other form, so when we create the item from this script, we can actually populate the item with the right image and the right description. Okay, and let's create a position for this one. Position x is equals to range.next between 10 and 700. Position y is equals to 0 there. Okay. Range.next between 10 and 500. So it can basically be spawned anywhere in the screen. Okay, and we also need a height and a width. So height equals to 50, and then width is equals to 50 as well. Okay, so that's all we need for the items constructor. Right after that, we're going to create a function that we can actually call from outside of the class. And in this one, we're going to say public void check lifetime, check lifetime. Okay, and in this one, what we're going to do is we're going to say lifetime is minus, so we're going to reduce 1 from the lifetime each time this function is called, and then we'll say if lifetime is less than 1, then expired is going to be true. Okay, so whenever we call this function, we're going to reduce the lifetime of the item by 1, and then each time it's called, it's going to go to below 1 at some point. As soon as it's below 1, we're going to change the expired boolean to true, so that way we can check that if the item has been expired or not. Okay, so that's all we need for the items class, and now we can go into the main class, the form 1, and then add our additional instructions to this one. So these are the stuff that we did in the last tutorial, where we actually moving the player around in the screen, using the animations and so on. And now we just need to add a few more variables and a few more functions to make the remaining stuff work. So right under the variables here, I'm going to make some space and say items variables. Okay, and so that way it's all divided up. Okay, so first let's start off with a list of string, and then call it item locations. It's a new list. Okay, so here we're going to store all the items from the items folder, and then we're going to make another list of items. Okay, it's the items class that we created, and then we call it items list equals to new list items. So any list that is visible on the screen will be added to this list, and then it will be removed once it's been expired. Okay, after that we're going to need a spawn timer. So we're going to need a spawn time limit. Okay, let's give it about 50. I'm gonna give it a time counter, give that equals to 0. We need to count the times it's on the screen. And then lastly, we're going to need one for I think we also need a random here. Random and equals to new random. So we can randomly generate a item. And a last one is going to be an array. Okay, so we're going to give it a string, the new array called item names. So inside of this array, basically we're going to say which item is which. Okay, so if I go to the items folder here, okay, so in the items folder you'll see that each of the items is numbered. So basically this item is going to be loaded first, and then this one, then this one, then this one, right? So we can pretty much just determine a array list in a similar fashion. So we can say, for example, call this one a red sword, call this one a medium armor, this one like green shoes, gold lamp, red potion, fast sword, and so on, right? So if we write an array, then we're simply able to pull the items from the list and then assign the item names to the name inside of the class. It's this one here. Okay. So let me show you how that is done. So first, let's go and type in here red sword. Okay, and then the medium armor. Then it's green shoes, gold lamp, red potion, a sword. I'll go to enter the quotation on that one. A sword. Go to the instruction manual. The giant sword here. Giant sword, it's like a warm jacket. Wizard's hat. And then we have red bow and arrow. Red spear. Green potion. Heavy armor. Holy cursed axe. I don't know why it's cursed, but it sounds good. And we say gold ring and purple ring. That'll be the two last ones. Okay. So each of these items will represent a name of the items that we load from the items list, because there will be 17 items here, and then there will be 17 items loaded into the list. Okay, so as we are running the setup function first in the game, so we can scroll down to find the setup function. Setup function is right here. So right after the last line, we make some space here, and then we can say item locations equals to directory again. We get files, and this time the folder that we're after is items, and then after that we're gonna basically look for all PNG files again. Okay, and then we're going to turn that into a list. That way enumerates all the items inside of the folder and then loads into this list here. Then we can actually work with that list and with the array to create the items. So let's go ahead and make a couple of custom functions here in the end. So right after the animate player function, right, we're going to write a couple of functions here. So private void make items. That's one function there. Private void check collision. That's another one here. And then to actually detect the collision, we need a separate function where we need to manually insert the object 1 and object 2 properties to see if they are overlapping with each other. So let's say private, this one's going to be a boolean, so it's going to return a boolean. So detect collision. Okay, and then inside of this one, we're going to need to put in a few arguments. So I'm going to say int object 1 x, int object 1 y, int object 1 width, int object 1 height. Okay, so that would be for the object 1, and then we need to put in for the object 2, int object to 2x, int object to y, int object to width, int object to height. Okay, and then inside of here we can actually determine when the two objects are colliding with each other. Okay, so and to do that, let's actually do this function first, so that way we can get the confusing one out of the way first. Okay, so I'm going to do a if statement first. Inside of the if statement, we're basically going to say if object 1x plus object 1 width is less than or equals to object 2x, right? So if the object 2 is on the right hand side, left hand side of the object 1, or object 1x is greater than or equals to object 2x plus object 2 width, or object 1y plus object 1 height is less than or equals to object 2y, or object 1y is greater than or equals to object 2y plus object 2 height. Okay, so we're checking if the object is, let's say for example, so passing the object 1. So object 1 is, let's say for example, in the middle, and then object 2 can be either side on the right, left, up or down. So if that is the case, then there is no collision. So we can say return false, right? So there is no collision here, right? So we know the object 1 is either on the left, right, up or down. If that is not the case, then we can return true. Okay, so here we can say else, and then we can return true here. Here we can say found collision, right? So as you can see, as soon as we return true, the red line under the detect collision function is now gone. So that basically is saying is that, you know, that needs to return a boolean somewhat. So if this any of these 4 conditions are true, it's going to return false. Basically the collision is not happening. But if the object is overlapping, object 2 is overlapping with object 1, then there is collision. So that way we can just return true in that case. So that way we know it's colliding with a object. Okay, so let's do the make items function here. So I'm going to go ahead and create a local integer called I equals to run.next, and it's going to be anywhere between 0 and number of items available inside the items location list. Okay, so as soon as it generates a random number, then we're able to create a new items. Say for example, new item, that's a temporary name here, and then we call a new items. Okay, so we're calling the constructor that we created earlier. Now we can say new item dot item image is equals to image from file. From file, and then obviously we can say item location, and then we can pass in the I variable here, and then it will just load up the file that is selected from the random number generated here. Okay, so the I is going to be quite useful for us because now we can actually assign a name to the item as well. New item dot name is equals to item names, and then we can pass in the same I, because that will be the same number as this one, so we can just load up the same name as that. Okay, and then after that we're going to say time counter is equals to spawn time limit, and of course items list dot add a new item. Okay, so we're adding the new item to the items list. Okay, that's all we need for the make items function here. And mind you, this function is going to be running inside of our timer, because we need to periodically spawn items onto the screen. Okay, so if you go find the timer now, so right at the top here in the timer, what we can do is we can basically say check collision. So that's something that we have to check all the time, and we'll do that function next. And then here we're going to say if time counter is say greater than 1, so there is still value inside the time counter, then we're going to say time counter is going to be minus minus, so we reduce 1 for the from the time counter. Else time counter is 0, then we're going to say make items. Okay, and then as soon as it goes to the make items function, it will reset the time counter as well. Okay, so although we're making the items here, so it might be making the items in the background for us, but we're not going to be able to see the items because nothing's going to be drawn onto the screen yet. So to draw them, we'll have to run a for each loop and then find out how many items are available in the items list and then draw them onto the screen. So let's do that so we can actually check whether the items are being loaded properly. Okay, so I made some space between the canvas and the draw image for the player. So instead of here, we're going to say for each. And the reason I'm doing that here is because I want the player to be first layer of the program, right? I want these to be in the background. Okay, and then for the name of the item, we're going to say item is fine. And then we're going to say items list. So everything inside of the items list, say canvas, graphics. Oh, sorry, that is the graph assembly, and draw image. Okay, and then first one is the image that we want. So we're going to say item image. The item image is the item image inside of the class. Okay, and then item dot position x, item dot position y, item dot width, and then item dot height. Item dot height, like so, and then we end the line with a semicolon there. So at the moment we might have a bit of a problem because at the moment the item is going to be nulls, right? So basically it's going to be empty. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put this inside of an if statement. I'm going to say if item list is not equals to null, right? So if there's some item inside of the item list, then it can basically populate, right? I'm going to take the bracket here. So basically it's inside of the if statement there. I think this way it'll be a little bit better because then we won't get an error to say, okay, there's no item inside the item list. So we're trying to run through an item that's completely empty. Okay, I'm going to get rid of some of the empty spaces here. Okay, let's run this one now and then let's see what it does. As you can see, our first item has been spawned onto the screen there. Okay, there's a couple of more items that are spawning on the screen now. Okay, so these are just randomly being spawned on the screen. Okay, so far so good. All right, also want to test out the limiter for this one, right? So because we have the check, did the spelling wrong on that one, the check lifetime. Okay, so check lifetime basically going to be removing them if they need to be removed from this from the list. Okay, so to do that, we'll now start on our last function, which is the check collision one. Okay, so for the check collision one, we also need to do a for each loop again. Let's do a for each loop. For items, item is fine, items list dot to list. The reason we're using the to list is because now we need to remove items from this list and refresh the actual list index. So it's better to use a to list, otherwise it's going to cause an error. The item here, the check lifetime. Okay, so because the function exists inside of the items class, this is how we're going to basically run it. So item dot check check lifetime. So this one is going to running inside the timer, so it's going to reduce 1 from the lifetime, and then we can basically say if item.expired, so that's the boolean, and then we're going to say item image is equals to null. So we empty the image first, and then we can remove it from the list. Items list dot remove item. Okay, so that way once it's removed from the item, it's not going to be drawn onto the screen. Because the image will hold some sort of value inside the memories, that's why we're nullifying it. So next time once C# automatically does the garbage collection of the game, it will just remove any items that's not used in the memory, and it will just clear it up for us. Okay, so we can check that out now, because we're already running the check collision one inside the timer. Okay, so we just have to wait to see if the items get disappeared. So that one appeared first. Okay, so as you can see, that disappeared as well. Okay, so basically this is one way to keep the screen kind of clean, I suppose, because without the items clogging up the entire area. Okay, and it also gives the player a reason to move around on the screen, because they know for a fact that items are not there forever. So unless you capture it within a certain amount of time, it's not going to work. Okay, that's working great. Now we need to check for collision, so let's do that here. So under the check life function and the if statement, we're going to say a boolean called collision, and this is going to be equals to detect collision function, because this one returns a boolean, so be able to store it inside of a local variable as well. So the two objects that we need is going to be for player X first, player Y, okay, and then we're going to say player.width, and then player.height. Okay, so that's for the object 1, and for the object 2 we have item dot position X, item dot position Y, item dot width, and item dot height. Okay, so just matching it to the requirement inside the arguments of the function. Okay, so any value that's basically gets checked in there, it will be either true or false at any given time. Okay, and now we're going to say if collision, so basically if collision is true, all right, then we're going to say lbl elected dot text equals to elected the, and then we can say item dot name. Okay, and right after we do that, we're gonna empty the item, so say item dot image equals to null, and then items list dot remove item. So we can remove the item from there. So as soon as we collected it, we don't need it on the screen anymore, and then we can just remove the item from the list. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it for the check collision function. I'm just going to quickly test this out. So I have one there. I've collected something called red giant. Okay, I think what I can do is I need to move the label a little bit more, because it's too close to the edge there, so we can't really see the writing. So slightly larger. That way all the text can fit in there. Okay. Okay, so I collected a red potion, medium armor, by the ring, gold ring, instruction manual, collected the gold lamp, green potion, giant sword, warm jacket, lamp again, bow and arrow, wizard's hat, red spear, heavy armor. Okay, so yeah, everything seems to be working quite nicely. Okay, That's about it really. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this little add-on to the tutorial. Please let me know in the comments if there's anything else that you guys want to see. Thank you so much for watching it to the end. Please leave a like and a subscribe to the channel. It will help me out a lot. And as usual, I will see you on the next tutorial.